Welcome to St Mary's Church in Plympton. I'm at the south boundary of the church graveyard. You can see the church just behind me there. But on the south side of the churchyard is something else that's more historical. This is the site of Plympton Priory. Plympton Priory was here from about a small house, when it was a small house in about 983 to 1100. And then as things got more complicated and busy down here, and with trade coming through here as well, they started to develop the church as a whole for the parish. And that is the parish of the Blessed Virgin Mary in Plympton. And that was built between 1240 and 1311 when it was consecrated. And there we are, so it's not far from here. The priory is now, unfortunately, a ruin, but it's a scheduled monument. The church is still in active use today, and that was built 1240 to 1311, consecrated then. And we'll go in and now look around the church. We are now inside the south porch, and what you'll see around here is some quite nice carving of up into the ceiling. I'm just going to turn it around so you can see it there. All right. Now, up here, we have three niches, which probably would have held the statues of St Mary the Blessed Virgin, St Peter and St Paul. St Peter and Paul were the patron saints associated with the priory and with Plympton as a whole. And the ceiling, which dates to the original time, is quite exquisite and well protected in the south porch. That middle boss with the cross, two people either side, apparently is a standard shape seen only between the times of about 1200 through to about 1650 to 1700, and therefore can identify church's age quite reliably. The carved stone bosses are of various types, including people, floral emblems and other graphics. And here inside the porch you can see a stone slate cross linked to the cholera grave outside. And on the other side of the porch you will see what is thought to be an altar tablet from the priory, probably dated before about 1100. And in front of it is a Victorian stock replica, which was probably made for a fair or something around 1930s. And on the right is the emblem, which is a copy of the coat of arms, which was seen also over the tower house on the other side of the graveyard, with the keys of St Peter, the sword of St Paul, and the coat of arms of Plympton Priory, 904 AD to 1539, when it was dissolved under Henry VIII. It was discovered in a broken condition, and this was a restored element to reflect that in 1950s. The window above the west door is a rather nice example of the parable of the Good Samaritan. This was actually put here by the parishioners after the then vicar, who looked after the cholera victims over in the cholera hospital, died. He died about 1850, and in 1832 was the cholera epidemic. He served them during that time, and this act of kindness was reflected in this particular window. On the tower side, just near that door we've just looked at, is this coat of arms on what's called a hatchment, and it's dated about 1667-68. And this was presented after King Charles II was restored to the throne, and in fact visited here around that time, and then sent one of these down to show that he'd visited when he was reclaiming his kingdom after the end of the Civil War and Oliver Cromwell's demise. Inside the church, near the west door, we have this rather strange chair, which is scrimshaw work brought back from the West Indies in the 1950s by a parishioner and presented to the church. It's a mixture of carvings by seamen from either the West Indies or the East Indies during their travels. And that is right next to the War Memorial, which strangely is inside the church. And this is a mirror of the Community War Memorial by St Marys. This is the original font, dated around 1311. And there are a number of windows around which are described elsewhere. We have a children's corner, as it's still in use. And we have tablets to various people who died in the First or Second World War or afterwards, left by the families. This is a rather fine window, but more importantly, at the top are the sole remaining elements of medieval glass from back in the 13th century, 14th century, sorry. And they're the only bits left. The rest were apparently destroyed during the Civil War by Oliver Cromwell. You may know that Plympton and Plymouth, there were a number of skirmishes and battles around here during the Civil War, including at Freedom Fields, but also in Plympton. The North Chapel. In the North Chapel, we have this memorial to William Strode, who died in about the 1650s. He was a parliamentarian and was linked into the Newnham Park estate, and with his 2 wives, and also with indications of his 12 children there. And also, confusingly, the one down here is called Richard Strode. But notice the heraldic elements. We have the Strode coat of arms, which is the 3 griffins. Oh, sorry, the 3 leverets, beg your pardon. There you are, 3 leverets there you are. Okay, there's the 3 leverets, which are William Strode, the Strode family. Then you have the first wife and her heraldic symbol, and that is then linked into a joined up heraldic symbol here. There's the 12 children from both wives. She died, and then he remarried this wife, and her family crest is the 3 X's, and in fact there they are joined to his as a joined heraldic symbol. And then underneath the whole thing is the symbol of the whole line. Basically his is the majority and theirs is the secondary, because of course they're the ladies of the family. There's a plaque which is mixed Latin and medieval English, which is very difficult to decipher, I understand. And right at the top is a heraldic shield, complicated in a number of ways, and also with a, that's been studied by a number of academics, and it's a bit confusing, to be honest. In this north chapel, called the Catherine Chapel, we have where the altar is, and on the back wall there would have been some nice fine paintings at one point, which unfortunately the medieval paintings are leached out due to flooding that happened here a number of times over the ages. So unfortunately they're no longer legible, although with careful looking you may see the remnants of some lettering here, actually through the paint that's there. And over here on the north wall we have Richard Strode's tomb, and that actually dates to about 1437. This is around the time of the Black Prince, and it's understood that he died in France and was brought back. The chancel. The chancel is probably one of the oldest bits of the church, together with the Catherine Chapel we just visited. The Catherine Chapel started off as a small chapel and also a room where also they might have done assaying of tin, which came through here. And in fact, there's some evidence of 2 stories in that chapel, so it would have been used for alternate purposes at some point. And over here we have some rather nice wooden carving, including what is the Pinwell sisters carving in oak in the various areas of the choir. And these are actually designated, if you like, a monument to the death of some Earls of Morley. This one is Albert Edmund, Earl of Morley, died in about 1900, 1905. And the also additions were for other people who died from the Earls of Morley. This is Francis, 1907. And then we have the choir. So we got Harriet Sophia, Countess of Morley, She was born in 1809, died 1897. And this was put up in 1898 by one of her relatives, the choir stalls. And they're quite nice carving. It's been said that it's very difficult to carve in oak because it's very hard and brittle. The screen's similar by the Pinwell sisters, and they rife all around Devon and Cornwall, where they set up like a cottage industry after renovating their father's church, which was in Ermington. The Reverend Pinwell was rector there, or vicar there. And we have quite nice neat water rail here with the angels that Pinwell sisters carved and installed. The altar is Victorian times. It's carved marble, and there's some other carving on there, but the thing I noticed, the way they put it rather neatly in front of the rather nice window, so it obscures it somewhat before the time of careful consideration. So you've got a bit of the nice altar actually obscuring the sign of Jesus, the ascended Christ. The side benches, these appear to have come from the Priory, so they predate the church by a significant amount, as does the piscina, where holy water is kept. That also appears to be from before the time of the church and may have been reused from the Priory. And then we have a plain window, and if we look back at the barrel ceiling here, with some rather nice wooden bosses, and that's nicely lit up. Now the ceiling is actually Victorian, lath and plaster with wood frame and trusses, but as most of these things, slated ones, previously they would have been tingles of wood, and therefore they must have been replaced in Victorian times, but now are in need of more care and maintenance due to their age. The lectern here is not Pinwell sisters, but it's quite a nice carved eagle, but apparently the carving below is not a Pinwell style. And now we go over to the pews. A lot of them are numbered. The pews themselves are not ancient. They only date from back in about 1920-ish, and they're numbered because there would be pew rent for families. Number 67, 66, 65, and so on. But every now and then you find the wrong number. 61, 60, blank, 110. That was because as they got problems with woodworm, one would be taken from somewhere else and bolted on. And occasionally you'd find one with a number with the name free on it to show it's accessible to visitors. The South Chapel is called the Strode Chapel. This is the family. Strode would be here on Sundays. It is their chapel. And in fact, you can see here that they had a nice squint through so they could actually see the cross on the altar when they were taking communion. So that's quite a nice item, isn't it, really? So you build a wall and then you put a hole through it so people can actually see something because of where they are. There's then Strode tablets around, memories of various people in the 1800s up to 1937, and most of the Strodes are buried over the far side of the church in a tomb, and with lots of the family buried there. And over here we have a tomb in bad condition, which is to Philip Courtney. He died in the 1500s, and in fact we were told that it was damaged by Oliver Cromwell's gang when they broke in. The difficulty is that to understand why they didn't damage the other one on the other side, Richard Strode's, apparently that is an indication there was probably a wooden screen over the other side, which meant they didn't see it. So over there, that was probably a wooden screen right the way across there, and they didn't notice it or they were disturbed. On this side, there is sign of there used to be a rood screen here going up the stairs, and on the top there'd be wooden walkway along the top, and then monks or other people in the church would then light the candles for evening services when it's dark. Transept. In the south transept we have again a number of memorials. A lot of these are to soldiers various ages, and they come from a number of families. For example, the Saltow Simmonses, the families Saltow and Simmons joined together by marriage and kept both names. So we have lots of Saltow Simmonses. We have the Snellings. There's a list of the Snellings that are buried in a tomb elsewhere. And we have a tablet here for the Osmond tablet, which actually is linked into the member of the Osmond family who was actually at Trafalgar as surgeon. So this is to the memory of James Osmond, surgeon, and died at Ridgeway, 26th of February 1849. Okay, and he served as assistant surgeon on HMS Swiftsure. Up on the wall in the south transept, we have the squint first from where the vicar would have lived, up in a little room there. He'd be able to view the choir over here, because historically, of course, the chief chorister would teach the new choristers how to read and sing, and it would be like a school system, and he would be able to keep an eye on them while he was doing other things and make sure they kept good order. And this memorial here is to someone called Richard Mudge, and below is one to George, I can't read it now, George Castle, isn't it? I think so. George and Eliza Castlereagh, I think. But you find a number of these around the place. Lots of people would pay a significant amount of money to put up something in the church to their loved one, a form of income. South door you find other tablets. This is to Henry Burrell Mudge, another person in the forces who died in South Africa during the Boer War in 1900. You've got Russell Harris here, and he also died in the Dardanelles in 1915, and so on. So you can browse around those and read the stories of people well remembered. And so, to end up, here's a church founded in 1311. How is it kept up? By the people who attend and give regularly to its maintenance, and also to anyone who cares to take an interest and donate to help us in whatever form they wish. So if you'd like to donate, please look us up online, okay, and perhaps donate to us. Help us out to keep this lovely church standing and in good condition. Thank you.